How to deal with grip strength issues for cleans and power cleans and clean pulls. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. So for now, don't worry about it too much. Hook grip is definitely the way to go. If you are hook gripping and you're still having issues, then the next is going to be chalk. Chalk increases your grip, like the friction between your hand and the bar a lot. And oftentimes when guys have issues with grip strength, that's going to be the easiest fix. The last one is straps, but I really don't recommend straps. For power cleans, they're okay if you have really mobile wrists, but generally that's very few people, and I don't really recommend it. How to hold the bar on front squat for large reps. They start to hurt because of overextension. So what happens on your front squat is you're losing position. So as you're going deeper, your back is fatiguing, you're starting to round here and your elbows are dropping. So you have to cue elbows up, keep the hands open, and then it is something you do have to train. I remember when I first started doing front squats, it was a bitch. It was super uncomfortable. About all the volleyball and flag football, I played 5 hours nonstop, did some max pros jumps. That is a lot. I mean, I know you're really robust, so you're slightly different, but that's a ton of volume. So basically the question is, I did a bunch of stuff. Am I doing too much? I would say, Boosh Exnader said this, and it's true. Boosh Exnader is like a legendary track coach. He said, is it intense enough for you to progress and or is it easy enough for you to recover from? And if it's neither, then you're not really getting anything achieved. So you need to ask yourself that. If you personally can recover from that and you can keep intent high, then that's fine. It's just most people can't. Most people are going to get hurt. Most people are going to have issues. You might be a rare case where you can handle that much volume and that much intensity. I would never be able to do that unless I were seriously dropping the intensity. And at that point, it would be endurance training. Intent is really important because that's what's going to move the needle when it comes to your nervous system and your neuromuscular components as well as the musculotendinous unit. There is a lot of complexity involved in this, but neurally speaking, we have like a bunch. I was studying this yesterday. We have a bunch of different pathways from our brain all the way to the muscle. So there's like your upper basically nervous system and then lower nervous system. And the upper levels of motor control is like, your brain stem, your different parts of your brain. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Then it goes into your spinal cord. Then it goes to your alpha motor neurons. So if you are doing 3 hours worth of stuff, essentially those systems get dysregulated. Specifically, what can happen is you have a lower frequency of neural, chemical, and electrical signals happening. The frequency of that is what allows you to produce force really, really fast. So by doing it a bunch, you might be getting more coordinated, which is good. You might be getting some tendon adaptation, but you also might not be maxing out your what we call like neural drive. And at the end of the day, you're in the in between where again you might be getting more coordinated, which is good, but and maybe the muscles are adapting, but if you're not pushing your nervous system, then that also might be limiting you in the long run. So it's a little bit of a give and take. You can kind of choose how I wouldn't say this. You'd have to use your discretion and use a little bit of problem solving yourself to ask yourself like, do I feel like I'm jumping high this whole time? Do I feel like this is helping me or do I feel like this is just low effort, plyo contacts where maybe I'm getting some tendon adaptation, maybe I'm not, but it could be something limiting you. That is maybe the easiest way to say it. In the end of the last cycle was written that I should feel fresh and bouncy, but I jumped terribly in general. I felt weak on the lifts that week. My 2 foot was kind of okay, and my 1 foot dropped like 4 inches compared to 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I'm detraining or fatigued. Gym lifts were too easy for me this cycle, and I got used to training super hard. Now I decided trying to do the exact percentages. Sometimes I push percentages, for example, on snatch, but I think I'm neurally fatigued because I haven't been doing almost any plyos for 7 months, and this cycle had plyo volumes for me. On the deload week, I maxed out. Plus, I did some plyos. I jumped a lot. I think 200 jump. Oh my God. Let me check maximum. Oh yeah, you're fatigued, brother. You're just absolutely crushed right now. So yeah, your nervous system is just annihilated. You probably need the deload wasn't enough for you to jump high. Like it just wasn't. The deload was not enough time off for you to feel good. You needed more time. So this week you're moving into more intense stuff here. Yeah, it just tells me plyo volume. You're very sensitive to plyo volume, and more is not necessarily better. So I would think that you probably, I mean, you could train through and test it, like you could finish the cycle and see, and then it would tell me like you respond better to strength volume than plyo volume, and plyo volume is like really potent, and strength volume is just like a good balance for you, and you need to get really, really strong, and then we can build in the plyos more carefully. There's a lot of problem solving there. You can do it either way. You could unload completely and see if you're going to get. I would probably recommend that actually for you, just because it would be fun to test for you, and you'll probably jump better in the long run. We're just going to unload you a bunch for 2 more weeks. We'll run this for a little while and see. And then if you're feeling really, really good, then we know that the plyo volume helped, but that you needed more time to recover from it. With lack of mobility with tibial rotation, things like tibial rotation, hip IR, ER, cause knee pain when trying to get into the more or less, depending on hip anatomy, extreme positions. Yes, absolutely. I feel this is the main reason for why I developed pain in my medial meniscus as well as chondromalacia. To add on, I did 42-inch drops with no pain but pressure on the knee. I'm going to do again. No, no, you're doing the right thing. Do the drops. It's definitely happening because you're forcing positions. So, Juan, you're similar to me. I tried the same exact thing you're doing right now, like the same exact thing. And it's not good for long-term health. You're essentially forcing positions that your body was never meant to be in, and no amount of mobility, if it is anatomical, will make it better. Now, if you do feel like, mobility work is helping and you're getting in those positions comfortably, then keep doing it. But it doesn't sound like that's the case. I would not force that. I would lean into what is more natural for you and really try to max out the things that you comfortably can. Oftentimes, what I see is allowing myself to twist on the ground helped a lot. For you, 1 foot might be better in the long run because you're not going to be limited in the rotational aspects off one. It's up to you. I think I've seen you do both. Knowing how far your technique has come in the last like couple months, I wouldn't try to keep edging out that little bit if you don't have the mobility to do it. It seems like you don't, specifically in your hip internal rotation, external rotation. So I would need to see the jumps specifically, but focus on getting healthy first. And I would tell you moving forward not to force that. You can keep stretching internal external rotation, but if you feel pinching in your hip, then you need to lay off for sure. Use something else because this is a recipe for disaster if you force. I've lived this already. I did this in 2017, 2018. I wanted to have better jump technique, and I forced it and forced it and forced it, and it just pissed off everything. And I realized I am not built to do this, and I accepted it. I maxed out what I could do, and it was not worth it. Don't hurt yourself to just get a little bit better technique. Use what you have and max that out and increase your RFD. Take the sprints out, or I can take them out, and then I would do drops this week and next week on Thursday. I think you'll probably feel really, really good. I would cut the Nordics out and put them as RDLs.
Yeah, when I say the back of my knee, I say it's kind of like the upper portion of my calf as well.
Oh, okay. So it could be the calf raises too. It sounds like it's distal hamstring tendinopathy. Cami has that too. Take the sprinting out, it'll probably clear up pretty quick and just focus on the jumping. I'm adjusting it right now, so you should be all right. I think in a week or two you'll be feeling really good. The quarter squats should be relatively heavy. Lay off the intensity of the isos and see if that helps as well. Can I substitute dunking for practicing volleyball? Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. On the off season, so I only practice on Saturday. Yep, that's perfect. Increasing sprint stride length. Any specific analysis? Olympic Training Center. My stride frequency was a lead. My stride length is lacking. Ooh, Brandon, that's some good ass data. So they're inversely related. I'm sure you know that. So some people will naturally run faster as an absolute when they lean into the stride frequency. They're going to run slower if they try to, slow that down and push for stride length. You're going to need to test decreasing your stride frequency actively. So if a 10 out of 10 is you going as hard as you can, you need to switch to like a 9 out of 10 rhythm or like a 8 out of 10 rhythm. And what will happen is you'll spend more time on the ground and you'll spend more time in the air, which will allow you to displace more each contact. But then your stride frequency is going to drop. So you have to play around. It's a delicate balance. You don't want to be so high on the side of frequency where you're like a ladder drill, but you also don't want to be bounding, right? That'd be like a 1 out of 10 rhythm stride frequency and then a 10 out of 10 stride length. That's essentially bounding for length. So you have to balance those variables and try to figure out, okay, how long does my RFD allow me to push and still benefit from this while not suffering too much or like taking away too much from my stride frequency. You want to find the perfect balance of those variables. So just play around with it. Try to drop your stride frequency to an 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 and see how much your stride length goes up. you're probably going to need the analysis, the guys at the, I'm assuming, I don't know if you're on the track or the ice, but you're going to need them there to like look at that for you at the Olympic Training Center. Hopefully, they can get more data for you, and you need to actively change that. Now, outside of that, if you want to keep your frequency the same way, then you need to get your shin angles lower and your RFD has to go up. So essentially, what will happen is you're taking less time to get through full hip and knee extension, and you're having more horizontal vectors. Now that happens because your shin angle is dropping more horizontally, and so you're also planning further behind your body as a result. The downside of that is it's really hard to balance because now essentially you're falling forward the whole time. You can't apply vertical ground reaction forces fast enough to keep you balanced and generating horizontal force backwards. It's kind of complex, but that is the somewhat the answer. Donovan has something to say to the group.
Hello, group. How's it going?
Where's
Where's the shot? Right here.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Yeah, that's good. The man, the myth, the legend. Just joined THP last week. Welcome to the team. Hopefully, you're getting the most out of it. I've largely built my own vertical jump programs for the past few years based on the vertical jump Bible methods with moderate success. 10 to 12 weeks of strength accumulation work, then 4 weeks of plyometrics, depth jump, max vert, then deload. This is the latest program. I'm wondering how you think THP training will differ from this as I've become pretty discouraged from what I feel like is a plateau with my current training. You guys, I'll share this so you guys can see it. It's tough to analyze programs. I can't remember who the guy is. It Kelly or something. I can't. No, it's not Kelly Starrett. Kelly Baggett, I think, is the guy that does this. Alrighty. So progression. Session one lower. Session two upper. Session three interesting. Session five. So it's Monday through Friday. Weighted jumps, high bar squat. Oh, week six. This is your progression. Okay, there's just not enough variety here from what it looks like. Yeah, especially if you've been repeating this a bunch of times. So, long-term athletic progress or long-term athletic development is a very tedious and slow progressing thing. It's not something that's linear. I think a lot of the problems with these older programs is that the coaches are assuming that you're linearly going to adapt. This is all good in theory, right? It's good that you develop strength, you develop power, and then you developed, um, elasticity. That's awesome, but that looked very block periodization. Like when it says blocks, that looked like block periodization. So what oftentimes can happen is you're detraining qualities when you're working on a different one. And it's almost the simplest form of training. I don't know how else to say that, but it's very, very, very simple. That's like a very non-complex, very basic progression. It works for people for a little while, can work for a long time for some people, especially really, really talented guys. But if you really want to move the needle, you've got to use more complex systems. And so you have to use more complex periodization. So you're not detraining every time you get into the next cycle, right? And that's the beauty of long conjugate sequence systems is you're able to maintain certain qualities while you work on other qualities. And so you're able to, I would say, high tides raise all ships, right? You're able to improve all of these other metrics that will improve your power indices, that will improve your elasticity, that will improve your jump. But then you also have to factor in other variables that I would say traditional or classically trained coaches don't necessarily account for. I'd say is the biggest difference between me and maybe Mike Young or Boo or these other guys is I don't necessarily view things as polarizing as maybe what they do. I look at it more as you're training, you're improving the things that are going to make you better, but the timelines might be different than what you expected. So you need to always be testing and collecting data and seeing like, is this better? Is this not better? And then moving forward accordingly. So I think for us, you're definitely going to be accumulating, you'll be accumulating strength work, you'll be accumulating power work, you'll be accumulating elastic work, but it's going to be all kind of blended and meshed together so that you don't really detrain any of those one qualities, which is the major downside of doing block periodization. The other thing is it's hard to get better at jumping when you're not jumping a lot and enough. And if you're not working on your technique, I would really encourage you to check out Josh Rubel's training diary right now on YouTube. He's probably training harder than anyone else is right now. Especially because I'm in person with him. So I would follow along with that and you'll see some of the small adjustments that I make along the way where I take into account fatigue and I take into account technique and I try to optimize everything, but in a way where he's going to stay healthy and continue to make long-term gains. How I kind of view it is putting hay in the barn for future outcomes. And That's more so the difference between what you have here and maybe what I would recommend as a expert in the field, I guess you could call me. 6 months post ACL, and I'm still experiencing incomplete tetanus during weighted knee extensions. I mean, it's probably neural. If you're not, when you say incomplete tetanus, I'm assuming you mean literally the muscle being completely locked out, right? It's possible. What happened, depending on the graft, is that your tendon isn't allowing you to on the antagonistic side, or you have some sort of neural inhibition on the anterior side of your knee. Ben would be a better one to ask because he's a nerd about this. But if I had to guess, I would assume that there's probably some sort of what is it? Excitatory postsynaptic synapses, I think is what they are. And if you have, and you have one is glutamate, that's one that's the excitatory one, and that's one of the chemicals to neurotransmitter. And then there's another one that's inhibitory. I can't remember, is it GABA? I can't remember. It's just slipping my mind right now. But you have a balance between these chemicals, and they turn from chemicals into electrical signals. We always have this switch from chemical to electrical, chemical to electrical. It's possible that you've got a lot of these inhibitory components in your, like your upper brain stem essentially, or your not brain stem, but your brain, your upper neural components. And that's not allowing you to recruit things downstream in your quadricep. That's one potential thing. It could be a ton of different things. That's one potential mechanism. It could be maybe that your alpha motor neuron which is like the neuron that goes down into the muscle, isn't getting fully a lot of activity because of something upstream, or maybe there's something in the actual neuron that is, not seeing as much activity as it should be between the ions moving in and out of that neuron. It's pretty complex stuff, and that's why it's like impossible to say. But I would assume that there's some sort of discoordination there. It could be related. I'd have to deep dive this and kind of like problem solve a little bit, but it could be a number of things. If depending on where you grafted, sometimes like if you graft the hamstring to the ACL, that tends to be like a predominantly popular one. Like Josh's dad is actually an orthopedic surgeon. I asked him like, which one does he usually graft, the patellar or the hamstring? He said he grafts the hamstring. It's better. So if you can't extend your knee, it could be because your hamstring is so freaking tight now because they grafted from your hamstring. I don't know which one. I'm currently fighting with two injuries. One on my right quad that always feel like a pull after sprints. That's the only cause of basketball and lifting are fine. It just hurts when I do sprints. Second is the top left of my left shin. It starts hurts when I play lots of basketball and jump a lot. I feel the knee sit. The weight's on the lower leg. They always come back even after breaks. What should I do? It sounds like you have it sounds like you have tendinopathy on your left knee, and then your right knee is just like an ongoing quad thing. You shouldn't, I mean, the quad is really going to be finding ways to increase the sprinting over time. You can't just take time off and then come back. You have to build into it and understand where your limits are. If you just cut it completely and then throw it back in at 100%, you're going to get hurt over and over and over again. So you have to slowly reintegrate the sprinting. You don't even have to have sprints if your only goal is like jumping. I would probably recommend just don't do it. If you keep re-injuring it and you have a hard time reintegrating it, just play basketball and lift and jump. And if it's not pulling, then that's fine. I mean, you don't need to have sprinting to achieve your long-term athletic potential. I mean, it helps for sure. But if it's causing you to take steps backwards all the time, I wouldn't encourage you to keep it in there. And then I would stop sitting on that lower leg, stop stretching it. It's the tendon. Go to the school community and watch the tendon lecture there and start doing isos with a kettlebell, very light. Probably integrate slow resistance training. You can also tell the coaches to put it in your training. You got to make a bunch of adjustments long term for it to kind of get under control. There's a lot to that. I don't have a ton of time to explain it. But Simon, do you have any experience with athletes losing a lot of progress after 2 weeks off? They won't. Honestly, they generally won't. They will usually get better after 2 weeks off because they're so fatigued that that's the only thing that can happen is they're going to recover and they're going to jump higher. If that is happening, then you're either still massively fatigued or you didn't train hard enough in the previous training week, or it's just a fluke week of a jump session. And that happens sometimes. Strength training for 2 months, progressed in weight. I never did work cleans. Does this change anything for the programming? You'll be fine. I would say just start really light with the cleans, really light with the cleans, and just focus on technique. You don't need to go heavy. You should master the technique in probably like, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks, give or take, ideally, and just keep sending feedback. Like every time you do a clean, film it, send it to the group chat, get feedback, apply the feedback, et cetera, et cetera. Just joined. What's up, dude? Welcome to the team. Pretty heavy, 89% of my squats and power cleans before training. How many days should I rest before starting with the THP workouts? The workouts started on T-Motor on Monday, so I missed 2 workouts already. Onboarding call with Richard. I'm currently jumping on concrete. Okay, so one, I would say you can just jump in. You'll be fine. If you should be fine to do that. if even if it's a 6 week loading, you just will unload you for a little longer at the end, if need be, if you feel like you're really flat. So you just communicate with the coaches like, hey, I've been training for 6 weeks. Can I unload? Just tell them that. Currently jumping on concrete courts. Should I do weekly as many as possible on wooden courts instead? Honestly, it's up to you. If you like jumping on concrete and you've been jumping on concrete and you haven't had any issues, it's totally fun to stay on concrete. But concrete is more intense. I prefer concrete actually because I'm outside and that allows my core temp to go up, and getting a sweat going is more important to me than jumping on hardwood in an AC, gym. Like I don't like that very much. Will I detrain my squat and power cleans if I do the volume work for the first few weeks on THP? Where no, you definitely won't. It'll probably get better. Like Josh just did a bunch of volume and a bunch of volume. His squat went up 15 pounds. Even if it drops, technically, it won't. It's just part of the long term plan. You have to get volume in. You can't always be an intense. You can't always do intensity. You have to do volume at some point, or you won't have any volume to adapt to. How wide am I allowed to split my legs on power cleans? Feels like cheating compared to the relatively narrow width. As wide as you can squat. If you can still squat at that width, then it's fine. If you can't squat past parallel, it's probably too wide. Anything else I should know as a THP newbie? Use the chat. That's the biggest thing, dude. Use the chat and make sure that you maximize that, because that is your direct line of communication between the coaches. And that's where you're going to get, I mean, coming to this call is a great start. And send videos, I would say, of your jumps and your cleans. Those are two really, and your squats. If you perfect those three things, you're going to have a lot of success long term. The last thing is just, this is going to sound so stereotypical, but just stick with it. It is so easy to become obsessed with these short term gains. The long term gains are the key to being a different, as this funny Kobe meme says, you're the same animal but a different beast, or whatever it goes, or the same beast but a different animal. That is the key to those long-term gains, is that you stick with it, and your body is going to adapt. Your muscles are going to get bigger, they are going to get stronger, you are going to get more explosive, you are going to get faster, you are going to jump higher progressively. Your technique is going to get better if you do the workouts and you are able to send in your stuff for feedback and listen to the feedback. All of that stuff is going to happen. And a year from now, you're going to look back and you'll be like, holy shit, like I'm infinitely more explosive and a better product than I was a year ago. Like Dom and Cami are a great example. Cami's a great example, dude. Cami ran like a 13-second 100-meter dash before he started with me. Now he's like 25 and running in the tens, and he's super explosive. He's bigger and stronger, and he's like a completely different animal, but the same beast.